Hi everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff and I'll be your host for the show. If you've had an encounter of your own and would like to speak with me whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you. Tonight's guest is Sarah. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Thanks for being here. Sarah, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
I recently graduated from high school and I am working on becoming a nursing graduate now. I am part of a paranormal research group that is named Ghost Quest. Other than that, there's not much.
So you're a member of a paranormal research group. Please tell us more about that.
We founded our paranormal research group about a year and a half ago. We have done quite a few investigations here in my hometown, such as Fort King, the actual fort, as well as a couple other investigations. Is
there much activity in your town?
I would like to think there's activity everywhere you go. It can't be gauged by more or less depending upon town. It just depends on what the spirits want to step forward and show you.
Yeah, I'll bet you're right. I'm sure there are a lot more encounters with spirits and things like that than what we're ever going to know because of all the people who have those experiences and never come forward and talk about them. Sarah, what bothers you most about having your Dogman encounter?
The fact that I had the encounter and didn't know what it was to begin with was probably the thing that bothered me most. I was uninformed on the subject and it led it to be a little bit scary.
Oh, I'm sure it was. When you see something like that all your life you've been told doesn't exist, how are you supposed to handle something like that?
I'm not sure. I suppose you're supposed to just try to take it in stride and learn as much as you can about it and so you can be aware for the next time you experience this.
Yeah, that's about all you can do. There are so many things that come along with having a Dogman encounter that most people sitting listening to the show who have never had one themselves will never understand or know. Having said that, how do you find out about the show?
My uncle listens to your show. He's a firm believer in Bigfoot, and while looking through some Bigfoot things, he stumbled upon the Dogman, and that led him to your show.
I'm so glad he knew about it. Because of you having that encounter, if you hadn't known about the show, I'm not sure how much help I've been able to offer you, but I'd like to think that it's at least been somewhat helpful having the conversations that we've had.
It has been really helpful being able to learn more about the Dogman so that I don't feel as afraid of it and what I saw. It helped me a lot.
Well, that's really good news. That's why I'm doing this in the first place. The more you know about anything, the more comfortable you're going to feel about it. So that's only to be expected. Before you had that encounter, did you like being outside at night?
Not particularly. I was never really too fond of being outside at night.
If you weren't all that fond of it before you had that encounter, I can only imagine how you feel now.
I don't like to be outside at night. The Dogman encounter just kind of reassured the fact that I don't want to be outside at night.
It's not surprising that you would feel that way. Do you live in a rural setting or more of an urban one now?
I live in more of a rural setting. Lots of farmland and forest around me.
No, that definitely can't help things. Please tell us about the Greenway trails and your connection to them.
The Greenway trails are a big reserve of land set aside in Florida, and now it's become more of an animal reserve. There's coyotes on it, and deer, lots of bunnies, and small animals and such. We actually even have red squirrels in the Greenways, so there's a lot of animals that live and roam in the Greenway trails.
How big is that Greenway Trail Reserve?
I know that it cuts all the way through Florida. I'm not sure how far down, but I know it goes down to the Everglades at one point.
Yeah, sounds pretty big. Is it almost all swamps, or is part of it dry?
There are some swamps. We're actually closer to a part of the swamp, but a lot of it's dry as well.
Because of having that experience with the Dogman, how close have you come to moving out of there just so you could get away from an area where there might be one up close and personal without you knowing it?
I actually haven't thought about leaving my house at all. I feel very safe here, and if they are close by, I feel like we respect each other enough to not invade each other's territory of sorts.
Well, I can appreciate those feelings, but do understand that it seems like in some cases they'll go miles out of their way to seek out an encounter. I don't know why, but they do.
I feel like the encounter I had, maybe it just wanted to be seen. Maybe they're looking for someone to notice them, like you have.
They do seem to have a way of doing that. All right, Sarah, let's get into this encounter of yours. On August 24th, you were driving home from work at 1 a.m. when you saw something you never expected to see. Please tell us about that experience. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
I was driving home, and it'd gotten pretty late, so no one else was on the road, and I saw this thing crouching in the road on the right side of the road. I was in the left lane, it was in the right lane. I was really confused, so I started slowing down. I almost actually stopped my car. At one point, when I got close enough to see what it was, I actually did stop my car, and it stood up on its back legs, and it was like something I'd never seen before. It watched me, and I watched it, and it had these red eyes that just kind of pierced your everything. It just watched, and I watched, and then it started walking across the road on its hind legs. I thought someone was playing some kind of prank on me. It just couldn't seem real to me. It just wasn't real. When it finally got to the right lane, it stopped, and it just stared at me, and I stared at it, and then it, snarled. It showed its teeth, and it was really scary. It wasn't like it wanted to jump in the car and hurt me, but it was making sure I knew that it was there and that it wasn't going to mess around if I tried anything. It was kind of warning me, I guess. It was really scary. And I wish I would have taken a picture. It just seemed unreal. I thought it must have been someone in a suit pranking me. This must have been fake. Someone's pranking me. But the more I looked at it, the more I realized it couldn't have been a prank. There's no way someone could get their legs to bend the way that it was. There's no one that's that lanky and tall. It was real, and I didn't know what to do. Finally, I just decided I needed to get away from it, so I went into the next lane, and I took off as fast as I could. I kept checking in the mirrors behind me to make sure it wasn't following me. I just drove as fast as I could to get home. And as soon as I got home, I went inside. I practically ran into the door. And I locked them, and I went straight to bed, hoping that, maybe in the morning I'd forget about this, that it was some kind of nightmare.
How much sleep did you get that night?
Not much. I kept thinking about it, so I didn't know what to do. I just kind of kept thinking about it, and it was kind of hard to get to sleep.
Oh, I'm sure it was. Sleep had to be hard to come by. When you have an experience like that, you're naturally going to lay in bed that night and just run it over and over again in your head, trying to make sense of it. When you did first see it, was it on its back legs or down on all fours?
It was kind of down on all fours, hunched down on the ground. It was more dog-looking when I first saw it. It was hunched over on all fours.
You said it was more dog-looking when you first saw it. How would you describe its shoulder structure? Was it more human-like or more dog-like?
When I first saw it, I was so far away that I didn't think that it looked like a dog in the road at first. But once it stood up, it had these broad-ish shoulders, and its arms kind of just hung by its sides. It was really lanky. I would say when it was kneeled down like it looked more like a dog to me from behind. I would put it doggish, but when it was facing me and, looking at me, its shoulders were more human.
Yeah, that had to be awfully freaky to see. When you saw it stand up like that onto its two back legs, was it a smooth transition?
I would think so, yes. It kind of pushed itself up. It used one of its front paws to kind of push itself into a standing position. But once it was standing, it was standing.
Oh, I see. When this is all going on, were your windows up or were they down?
No, my windows were up. I'm very glad I had them up.
Oh, I'm sure you were awfully glad they were up because, yeah, if they had been down, you would have really felt exposed, to say the least. How far were you when this happened to the closest house?
To the closest house? I was pretty far. I would say that the first house to be closest to me would be at least a mile away.
Yeah, that's pretty far. After having an experience like this and seeing one, how dangerous do you think they are?
I think if they want to be dangerous, they can and will be dangerous. I feel that if left alone, it wouldn't bother me unless it felt the need to.
Because you had that encounter, how likely are you to be willing to go out in the woods again after dark?
By myself, not very likely at all. I don't see myself wandering into the woods myself after this.
Let's talk about the recovery process. After you had that experience, did you do anything special to try and help yourself deal with it and rebound and get back to a point where you could function the way you wanted to function in life?
For a little while, I didn't really talk about it. I brought it up to my mom a few days after it happened, and I felt like talking about it would have helped. She thought that it was a demon or something, and so she told me it was normal, that we should just, leave it alone. It'll leave us alone. It won't bother us. So I decided I was going to try and talk to someone else about it, and that's when I talked to my uncle, and he told me about your show. After listening to your show a bit, I felt a little bit better about the whole experience, knowing that I wasn't going crazy, that there was actually something out there.
Oh, I'm sure you did feel better. Like I've said before, misery does love company. When people who have these experiences find out that it's not just them who's fighting through having to deal with the knowledge of knowing that these things are out there, it almost always is a huge help. At its closest point, how far were you from it?
Maybe 50 feet, give or take a little bit. It was relatively close to my car.
Yeah, 50 feet might seem like it's a pretty good distance, but when you see something like that, it might as well be right on top of you. When all this was going on, did it ever do anything that led you to believe it might be ready to approach you?
I don't think it was going to approach me, no.
Well, that's good. There are two different kinds of encounters. You've got the encounters where dogmen don't seem to be all that intent on approaching you or don't even seem to be focusing on you. You've got the other kind, which are much worse in almost every case, where the dogman is focused on you and it almost seems like nothing else in the universe matters to it. I'm so glad that you had the first kind that wasn't all that threatening compared to the second option.
Well, I definitely know that it knew I was there. We made eye contact. It knew I was there. It it saw me, and I saw it, but I didn't feel as if it was going to approach my car any closer than it already was.
Yeah, thank goodness it didn't. Just a bit ago, you talked about its shoulders, but as far as the arms would go, what did they look like?
The arms of the Dogman that I saw were very lanky, like long arms. It didn't seem like its arms fit to its body. They were longer than a human's would be to their body. It was definitely noticeable that it was a strong animal. It was definitely muscular of sorts. It wasn't thin, but it wasn't like fat either. It was husky. It was lanky and husky.
If its arms were that long when it was down on all fours when you first saw it, what kind of profile did its back have?
It was sloping. It would definitely be sloping.
Did it have a strange way of moving, or did it seem kind of fluid in its motion?
I would say it was fluid. It definitely knew what it was doing and how it was going to do what it was doing.
When this was all going on and you were studying it, I'm sure you never took your eyes off of it. What physical feature that it had upset you the most?
Its eyes. Its eyes were one of the scariest features. It's like it looked into you.
Yeah, I can understand that. I've heard that plenty of times before. Did you ever get a chance to see its teeth, or did it keep its mouth shut the whole time?
No, I saw its teeth. Its teeth were long and canine-like, and they had a yellowish tint. It was really scary to see.
Oh, I'm sure it was. When its mouth was closed, though, could you still see the teeth?
I don't remember. I just remember when it was, like, snarling at me. That's when I remember seeing the teeth.
That's all right. You had a lot of things going through that head of yours at the time, so no one can fault you for that. It's funny how different people look at their encounters in so many different ways. Some people think it's a matter of luck to see one. They're so glad they had their encounters. Not many people will feel that way, but there are some who do feel that way. You've got the majority of eyewitnesses who think it's a curse that they did have an encounter. Where do you fall in that group? Do you think it was a good thing that you had this encounter, or do you almost feel cursed?
I don't feel like it was a good thing, but I don't feel like I was cursed either. I feel like I learned more about this creature because it showed itself to me, and because of that, I can move forward.
Well, understand, there are ways you can look at this in a positive light. There are ways you can look at it in a negative one. You do have an advantage now. You do know that they are in fact out there. Other people who've never had an encounter, they don't have that knowledge. So, when you take the good with the bad, at least you do have something good that did come out of this that you can point to and think about. If there is such a thing as a good thing to take away from a Dogman encounter. Looking back on that experience, is there anything you wish you could have or would have done differently?
I wish I would have taken a picture. I feel like had I taken the picture, it would have been easier to show my family and my friends to help them experience what I had seen.
Would you have had time to dig your phone or a camera out of your purse, get it ready, and snap a photo of that Dogman before it was out of sight?
I don't think I would have been able to take a picture of it. I think it would have definitely either left or who knows what else could have happened before I was able to take that picture.
You're probably right. It goes without saying, too, that you were in fact in an impaired state.
Yes. It would have been really hard, I think, to actually get a good, clear picture of it.
It doesn't help either the fact that it was so late at night. That just makes it even harder to do something like that. How would you describe its fur?
It had a gray-brown color to it, like a red, gray-brown. It definitely fit into what the coyotes look like around here.
Do you have a big population of coyotes in that area, I take it?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, it's not always the case, but in areas where you do have high populations of coyotes, that's where a lot of encounters seem to be reported. I don't really know how it's connected, but it seems like it is in some way. Well, Sarah, it's about time for us to get out of here. Do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
No. Thank you again for having me on your show.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks again so much and have a great night.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.